Okay, hello to all those who are tuning in. It is continues to be a great zchut to share Torah with you from here, from the home of Rosh Moriat, into your homes and to your dorm rooms, wherever you are. And B'ezras Hashem, we should always continue to learn Torah together and to be able to teach one another from our experiences. So I just wanted to share with you a few very, very quick thoughts about Kaddish, about the first step of the Seder, and consequently in the 4 cups of wine that we drink. It's a focal part of the Seder, it's the central part of the Seder, so much so that halachically each one of the cups is a mitzvah b'fnei atzma, because we make a bracha before each cup. So what is so significant about these 4 cups, and why do we do it over wine? So what is the message that we can get out of this seemingly main central theme of the Pesach Seder? So I wanted to just go through a few different opinions through the course of history, and let's start with the Rambam. So the Rambam quotes this famous idea of Chayav Adam lirot et atzmo kehilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim, that a person has to see himself as if he or she left Egypt. And the Rambam says, let's look a little bit differently. Not only Chayav Adam lirot et atzmo, not only should someone see themselves as if they've left Mitzrayim, as if they've come out of Mitzrayim, as if they themselves have been one of the people that was redeemed from Egypt, but he says Chayav Adam leharot et atzmo. He adds a hey. The person has to show themselves. The person has to look like they themselves have left Mitzrayim. When you drink wine, your behavior changes a little bit. So when you drink wine, perhaps maybe that's the idea, that we change the way we look, we change the way we act, and then we too can, it is obvious that we ourselves have gone through a process and we have come out of Egypt as well. And I think that maybe the idea here is that we need to act more like we are a redeemed nation. That our behavior needs to be such that we act as though we are a nation that is proud, that is redeemed, that has been that is on a process, that is going in a very clear direction. That when we walk, we shouldn't walk with our heads held down and embarrassed and bashful for what we are, who we are, and what we represent. But we should walk with our heads held high. We should walk, as they say, become a mute. We should walk proud, proud of what we do, and proud of who we are. So that's the Rambam. The Netziv comes along and says, well, let's look at the concept of what these 4 cups represent. These 4 cups represent the 4 lashonot of Geula, of V'hotzeti, V'hitzalti, V'galti, V'lakachti, which appear in the beginning of Sefer Shmot. And we do have a bunch of themes of 4 in the Haggadah, right? We have the 4 questions, we have the 4 cups, we have the 4 sons, but we don't drink a cup of wine for each of the sons, right? We don't drink a cup of wine for each of the questions. So why do we drink a cup of wine for each of the 4 lashonot of Geula? So the Netziv suggests that we look at this not only as a cup of wine symbolic for phrase number 1, phrase number 2, phrase number 3, and phrase number 4, but that each one is a different stage in the Geula process. And that when we drink the wine, we're celebrating each and every stage on its own. That not only that we have to understand that things don't just happen, right? We celebrate the Seder is one night, or for those of us not yet in Eretz Yisrael, the Seder is 2 nights, and it seems like everything happened in one night very quickly. But the Geula didn't happen that quickly. The Geula happened in stages, and the Geula happened little by little. So when we drink to each stage, what we're recognizing is, what we're saying is that we recognize the fact that in Judaism and in life, things come in stages. You don't just jump to the finish line, that you sort of have to go through a process. But within each process, we can see a bracha, we can see a blessing, we can see a certain sign of redemption within the process itself. And maybe I think the mussar for that I take for our own lives in the Seder night is to remember that whatever things we're going through, or waiting for, or hoping for, whether we're waiting for certain things to pan out professionally or academically or socially, that things don't just happen overnight, that things always go through a process. And when you're going through the process, it's a little bit more difficult to appreciate the process. But often when we look back on it, then it becomes very, very clear to us. So maybe the Seder is a time for us to sort of refocus, take a step back, look at the different things in our own lives, both individually and nationally, and recognize and remind ourselves that things sort of happen in stages and process, and nothing. The finish line is a lot further than it seems when we first start out. So when we drink each cup of wine, we are celebrating the fact that we know that things happen in a process. And I'm just going to add one more thought to that thought of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, when he talks about freedom, and he says there's 2 different kinds of freedom. There's freedom from, and there's also freedom to. right? Freedom from slavery, freedom from bondage, freedom from being enslaved to a foreign country, a foreign ruler, foreign nation. But then there's freedom to what? What do we do with that freedom? How do we celebrate our freedom? What do we become with that freedom? And maybe that's part of the idea that we're supposed to think about of, v'hotzeiti v'hitzalti v'galti v'lakachti. Right? We've been redeemed, but what's the next stage? Maybe that's a little bit of the difference between being passively redeemed and being actively redeemed. Being passively redeemed means I can recognize the fact intellectually, emotionally that I'm no longer a slave. But now what do I do with my freedom? Right? What do I do with that who I am and that who I've been blessed to be a part of? So maybe that's another thing we can think about as we come a little bit closer to the Seder of what freedom to do what? What exactly are we celebrating? What is going to be the next, our individual fifth cup of wine? Shlomo Carlebach quotes a midrash that says, "Why is Birkat HaGefen at such a high status when it comes to brachot? Why do we make kiddush on Birkat HaGefen? Why is it such a holy? Why does the grape have such holy intrinsic value?" Now Shlomo Carlebach quotes this midrash that says that grape goes through a very difficult, complicated, and painful process until it becomes wine. A grape gets trampled upon, gets stepped on, and really gets completely crushed. But eventually it says, Midrash, it's served on Shulchan Melachim, right? The wine is served as the highest level of, and royalty, and the finest beverages in our world today are wine, and that's the finest quality of wine. That's what the Midrash is, and that's what Shlomo Carlebach, what he adds to it is that, in a very Carlebach way of saying, that if you would ask a grape while he's going through this process, how do you feel, right? He would want to give up, but he doesn't, and he stays with this process, and it only benefits him because he comes out so much greater. So too the Jewish people. Jewish people go through a tremendous amount in this world, a tremendous amount. Often it seems like too much. And if you would ask us along the way, do you want to give up? We might want to say, yeah, this is too difficult, this is too painful. But we stay in the game, right? We stay in the running, and because we believe that there's something greater waiting for us. We believe that this is not the world that God intended us, that God intended as the be-all and end-all of His creation. That there's a greater vision for this world, and we want to be a part of that vision. And so we go through the difficult process of what it means to be a Jew in this world today, just like the grape, hoping and believing that there's something much greater waiting for us out there. So maybe that's what we should be thinking about when we're drinking the wine, of how difficult things are, but eventually how wonderful they could become. Carlebach also quotes the Mea Shiloach, the Ishbitzer Rebbe of the 19th century, and the Mea Shiloach says that what we do with wine on Pesach is the opposite of what the world does with wine. Right? Why does the world drink wine? To make us, forget who we are. When you drink wine, you sort of forget who you should be, you forget what your status is, and you act in a way, when you drink too much wine, you act in a way that's unbefitting to you, and you act in a way that is not, as we would say in Israel, not mat'im to who you could be and what your potential is. So Mea Shiloach says that's our challenge on Pesach, to drink this wine and to act in a way that reminds us of who we are, that we are B'nai Malachim. Maybe throughout the year we don't feel like children of the king. Maybe throughout the year we don't feel like the chosen nation. Maybe throughout the year we feel like we're being trampled upon. But on Pesach, we're going to take that wine and we're going to drink it. And instead of forgetting who we are, we're going to remember who we are. We're going to remember what our destiny is. We're going to remember who we are capable of being. And maybe that's the challenge of drinking the wine, to remember all that we are capable of. I had one more thought about the wine, and that comes in the Hasidic sphere from the Shem Shmuel. The Shem Shmuel says, when you look at the Simanim of the Seder, start off with Kaddish, the next thing we go to is Orchatz, right? Kaddish, Orchatz, right? We get Kiddush, and then we wash our hands. It says usually throughout the year, the way of purifying yourself is Sor Me'ara v'Aseh Tov. Stay away from bad things, stay away from evil, and pursue good, and pursue greatness, and pursue Kedusha. But on Pesach, we have the opposite ability. We can start with Kaddish. It doesn't matter what we're in the middle of doing. It doesn't matter how impure some of our actions or thoughts might be. We can jump to Kaddish. We can sanctify ourselves immediately. You don't need to wait until you are at a certain level to be Mekadesh yourself, to be Mekadesh your surroundings, to sanctify yourself and to sanctify those around you. You can start off with Kaddish. And afterwards, you can let go of all those negative things. Maybe throughout the year, we say, I'm not ready to go to this stage of taking upon myself this idea, tefillah or brachot or learning or this commitment or that commitment, because I have to stop doing A, B, C, D, F, G. But Shem Shmuel says, no, in Pesach it's the opposite. In Pesach we start with Kadesh. In Pesach we say, you know what, just jump right into it. Sanctify yourself. Even if you haven't let go of certain things you need to let go of. Start with Kedusha, because you can always bring Kedusha into your world. You can always bring Kedusha into your life. And there should never be a time where you think, I'm not ready to bring Kedusha into my life, into the lives of those around me. Right? The Gemara says, Kadesh etzmecha b'mutar lecha. Sanctify yourself with that which you can. Right? You can find Kedusha anywhere. So my bracha to all of us, to myself and to you and to your families, is that Bezrat Hashem this Pesach, when we drink these 4 cups of wine, we should really have the ability, like the Rambam, to change the way we behave and to see ourselves as a redeemed nation. And like the Netziv says, to recognize that that things come as a process, to recognize that each stage in our own lives and in our national lives is part of a greater picture, and to celebrate the process and to remind ourselves that, stage by stage, things happen. To be like the Midrash and Rav Shlomo Carlebach, to remember that as difficult as the process is, like a grape, eventually we become hopefully the most refined that there is. And finally, with the Meshiloach, that hopefully this Pesach we will remind ourselves of who we are, who we're capable of being, and what our status is. And Bezrat Hashem, together with the hope of the Shem Yishmuel, that we can, we don't need to for something to happen before we become holy, or before we bring holiness to something else. That we're able to be Makadesh ourselves, Makadesh those around us, and Bezrat Hashem, bring a Kiddush Hashem to this world. We should have a wonderful Chag of Redemption and a happy Pesach.